Fact number 1. The unsinkable violet. The air is thick with the scent of icy salt water and the sharp tang of rusted iron. Violet Jessup was merely an ordinary stewardess, yet the vast sea chose her to be its ultimate protagonist in a grand drama. In the year 1911, she stood upon the deck of the Olympic at the very moment it collided with a cruiser. Exactly 1 year later, she is jolted awake by the terrifying, bone-chilling screech of metal tearing against ice on the Titanic. Violet finds herself cast into a lifeboat, clutching an unknown infant to her chest, amidst the freezing darkness. 4 years pass by. The First World War is raging. Violet is now stationed aboard the hospital ship Titanic. The ship strikes a naval mine and plunges to the seabed in just 50 minutes. Once again, against all odds, she survives. 3 of the century's greatest maritime disasters, the same freezing ocean, and one woman whom death simply refused to take. It was as if the Matrix itself pressed pause 3 times, specifically to allow her to walk out of the water completely unscathed. Fact number 2. Twice born in fire. August 6, 1945. The city of Hiroshima. Tsutomu Yamaguchi is stepping off the tram when the sky suddenly shatters into pieces with a blinding white light. The air reeks of burnt metal and searing pain. He miraculously survives at the very epicenter of the nuclear blast and, heavily bandaged, makes his way back to his hometown of Nagasaki. 3 days later, he is sitting in his supervisor's office, desperately trying to explain that a single bomb can annihilate an entire city in an instant. At that very moment, a second sun ignites outside the window. The second nuclear strike has begun. Tsutomu is on the ground once more, inhaling radioactive dust. He became the only man on Earth to officially survive 2 consecutive nuclear apocalypses. Reality itself had shattered around him, yet there he remained, standing resolute amidst the infinite sea of gray ash. Fact number 3. Joseph's heavenly baby, the city of Detroit, in the year 1937. Joseph Figlock is calmly sweeping the street, breathing in the familiar scent of city dust and industrial smog. Suddenly, a scream echoes from above. A baby falls from a 4th-story window, landing perfectly in the arms of the stunned janitor. Both are unharmed. Exactly 1 year passes. Joseph is standing on the very same spot, holding the very same broom, as if no time had passed at all. History repeats itself with surgical precision. From that very same window, the exact same baby falls once again. Joseph flings his arms forward once more and catches the child. This is no mere coincidence. It is a systematic error in the schedule of accidents. 2 years, 1 street corner, 1 janitor, and 1 infant who seemingly decided to test the very foundations of fate twice. Fact number 4. Mark Twain's comet. The year is 1835. Halley's Comet streaks across the Earth's sky, leaving a magnificent trail of stardust in its wake across the heavens. On that very night, Mark Twain is born. The writer always claimed he arrived with this fiery traveler, and would depart with it as well. He felt this connection deep within his soul. 74 years later, in 1910, Halley's Comet once again nears the Earth. Twain lies peacefully in his bed, breathing in the comforting scent of old books and rich tobacco. As the comet reaches its closest point to the planet, the heart of the great humorist stops beating the following morning. The universe fulfilled the terms of the contract with clockwork precision. The spectator in the hall called life was left in absolute silence. Fact number 5. The book from the subway tunnels. Anthony Hopkins was preparing for a new role and was desperately searching for a rare book titled The Girl from Petrovka. He scoured every single bookstore in London, yet the shelves remained empty. The air is thick with the scent of a damp underground and aged paper. The exhausted actor takes a seat on a bench at Leicester Square Station and suddenly notices a forgotten copy right beside him. It was the exact book he saw. 2 years pass by. On a bustling film set, Hopkins finally meets the author of the novel, George Pfeiffer. The writer sighs, explaining that he doesn't own a single copy himself, as he lent his last one, heavily annotated with notes, to a friend who lost it in the underground. Hopkins pulls the found volume from his bag. It was the very same book, complete with the author's own personal handwritten annotations. The probability of such an encounter in a city of millions is 0, yet the code of reality decided to grant the actor a truly royal gift. Fact number 9. The bloody brackets of the Hoover Dam. December the 20th, 1922. Construction of the Hoover Dam is just beginning. The air is thick with the smell of wet concrete and river silt. John Tierney becomes the first victim of this massive project, drowning in the turbulent waters of the Colorado River. Exactly 14 years pass. The construction reaches its completion, December the 20th, 1936. Patrick Tierney, the son of John, falls from a high tower and dies instantly. He became the very last victim of the dam's construction, father and son. The first and the last, the same day of the same month. It is as if death itself placed bloody brackets around this colossal structure. Fact number 10. The cyclists of the Finnish highway. The year is 2002, Finland. Snow crunches beneath the bicycle wheels. A 70-year-old man attempts to cross the highway, but is struck by a truck and killed instantly on the spot. The air is filled with the smell of burnt rubber and bitter cold. Just 2 hours later, another accident occurs. Another elderly cyclist perishes under the wheels of a truck, under identical circumstances. When police check the documents, they discover the victims were twin brothers. The second brother never even knew of the first one's death. They were born on the same day and departed this life just 2 hours apart on the same road. Space and time seemingly ran out of options. Fact number 11. The Prophecy of the Titan. The year is 1898. Author Morgan Robertson publishes a novella about a giant liner. The ship in the book is considered unsinkable, yet it strikes an iceberg on an April night in the Atlantic and sinks to the bottom. Almost all of the passengers perish due to a critical and tragic shortage of lifeboats. 14 years pass. The real Titanic, identical in size, speed, and passenger count, repeats every single detail of the fictional catastrophe. The very same location, the very same month, and the very same iceberg. Robertson didn't just write a book. He accidentally glimpsed the future's script in the archives of reality, where everything was already predetermined. Fact number 12. The real Richard Parker. Edgar Allan Poe writes his only novel about 4 sailors stranded in a lifeboat in the middle of the ocean without food. The air reeks of rot and desperate despair. To survive, 3 of them kill and consume the 4th, a youth named Richard Parker. This was pure authorial fantasy, published in 1838. Yet, 46 years later, the real-life disaster of the yacht Mignonette occurs. 4 survivors drift at sea. Consumed by hunger, they decide to kill the weakest among them. The victim is a 17-year-old cabin boy named Richard Parker. The universe literally copied the names and horrific circumstances from the dark book, manifesting fiction into bloody reality without a single change. Fact number 13. The mirror of American tragedies. Abraham Lincoln was elected to Congress in 1846, John F. Kennedy exactly 100 years later. Lincoln ascended to the presidency in 1860. Kennedy followed, precisely 100 years later in 1960. Both met their tragic end on a Friday, each perishing from a fatal gunshot wound to the head. The air is saturated with the elegant scent of their wives, festive perfume, and the acrid, sharp smell of gunpowder. Lincoln's secretary was named Kennedy, and remarkably, Kennedy's secretary bore the name Lincoln. Both presidents were succeeded by Southerners, surnamed Johnson, both born exactly 100 years apart. It appears as though the screenwriter of history simply reused the exact same template for 2 of America's greatest tragedies, altering nothing but the twins. Jim Lewis and Jim Springer were separated at birth, growing up in different families with no knowledge of each other's existence. Yet reality wove them together with invisible threads. Both families named the boys Jim, and both grew up to become police officers. Both married first wives named Linda, then second wives named Betty. Both gave their sons the exact same name, James Allen. Even their pet dogs shared the exact same name, Toy. They smoked the same brand of cigarettes and drank the same beer. And every single year, they traveled for vacation to the exact same sun-drenched beach in Florida. When they finally met 39 years later, they discovered they had lived 2 identical lives under completely different surnames. Fact number 15. The Curse of the Iron Lame. June 1941. Soviet archaeologists opened the tomb of the great conqueror Tamerlane in Samarkand. The air is thick with the scent of century-old dust and vinegar. On the sarcophagus lid, a warning is inscribed. He who opens the grave shall release a spirit of war. More terrible than himself, the scientists laugh and lift the heavy slab on the 19th of June. 3 days later, Nazi Germany launches its invasion of the Soviet Union. The bloodiest war in history begins. Only 18 months later, when Tamerlane's remains were finally returned and buried with honors, did the turning point in the Battle of Stalingrad occur. Was this mere coincidence, or the activation of an ancient mechanism of retribution that had waited for its moment beneath that heavy slab? Fact number 16. The Black Monk of Joseph Egner. The Austrian painter Joseph Egner fought a lifelong battle against his inner demons. At the age of 18, he attempted to take his own life, but he was saved by a mysterious monk who appeared out of nowhere. 4 years passed. Joseph was once again preparing a noose, and once more the same monk intervened at the very last moment. At the age of 30, the painter was sentenced to death due to his radical political convictions. As the executioner was preparing the rope, that same old monk appeared in the hall and secured a royal pardon. 38 years later, Egner finally pulled the trigger of a pistol, ending his long struggle. The funeral service was led by the same nameless monk. This man was more than just a savior. He was a glitch in the system that held Joseph on a leash until the very end. Fact number 17. The empty church in Nebraska. March 1st, 1950. The town of Beatrice. The air is heavy with the scent of spring rain and dust. Precisely at 7:25 in the evening, a horrific explosion ripped through the local Baptist church. The building folded like a house of cards. Normally, a choir rehearsal would be taking place at this hour, attended by 15 regular members. But that evening, the impossible happened. Every single one of the 15 members was delayed, for various different reasons. The mathematical probability of 15 individuals simultaneously breaking their schedules is 0. This was a collective glitch in reality that spared 15 lives from certain destruction. Fact number 18. The final breath of the Founding Fathers. July 4th, 1826. America celebrates the 50th anniversary of its independence. The air is filled with the scent of firework gunpowder and festive pies. On that day, just hours apart, the nation's two primary architects, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, passed away. They were allies and rivals all at once. In his final moments, Adams whispered that Jefferson still survived, unaware that his friend had passed away 5 hours earlier. To depart on the same day on such a sacred date, exactly half a century after signing the Declaration, is far beyond mere coincidence. It resembles the closing credits of a perfectly edited film, where the lead protagonists must exit the stage together amidst the thunderous roar of a final salute. Fact number 19. The Archduke's license plate. The year is 1914. Sarajevo. Archduke Franz Ferdinand travels in an open-top motorcar. The air is a cocktail of expensive perfumes and raw gasoline. Affixed to the vehicle is a license plate reading A111118. On that fateful day, his assassination became the spark that ignited the First World War. Yet the true shock emerged 4 years later. The official end of the war, November the 11th, 18, abbreviated as 11-11-18. It was the exact sequence of numbers inscribed upon the car's bumper on the very day the global catastrophe ignited. The vehicle's license plate was far more than a random sequence. It was a cryptic prophecy of the finale that no one could decipher in time. Fact number 20. 6 meters of the Great War. Saint Symphorien Military Cemetery in Belgium. The air is heavy with the scent of damp grass and ancient, weathered stone. On one side lies the grave of John Parr, the very first British soldier to perish in the fires of the First World War. On the other side stands the grave of George Ellison, the final soldier to fall. Between their two deaths, 4 long years and millions of lives were lost. When the cemetery was arranged, their proximity was never planned. Yet, by a strange decree of fate, they lie directly opposite one another. Separated by a mere 6 meters, the first and final victims of the great slaughter gaze upon each other across time and the earth itself. The code of war closed exactly where it began, leaving behind only 2 white slabs locked in an eternal silent dialogue. Fact number 21. The curse of the movie The Omen. The year is 1975. Production begins on The Omen, a film centering on the arrival of the Antichrist. The air is thick with the scent of church wax and chilling dread. A massive bolt of lightning strikes the airplane carrying lead actor Gregory Peck. Mere weeks later, the impossible repeats itself as a second bolt of lightning tears through the sky, striking the screenwriter's plane. The darkness follows the crew to the ground as the director's hotel is torn apart by a devastating terrorist bombing. But the true horror awaited after the cameras stopped rolling. The special effects master, responsible for the film's most gruesome, reality mimicked art in the most grisly fashion. His companion suffered the exact same horrific fate he had engineered for the screen. Standing right beside the carnage was a signpost pointing to the town of Omen, exactly 66 kilometers away. It was as if reality itself exacted its revenge on those who dared to toy with dark ancient forces for the sake of cinema. Fact number 22. The fatal number of Louis. When Louis XVI was but a child, an astrologer issued a chilling warning: beware the 21st day of every month. The king lived in such profound fear of this prophecy that he refused to schedule any matters of state on the 21st, attempting to hide from fate. The atmosphere is thick, with the scent of cosmetic powder and the dry, musty tang of ancient parchment. But destiny is an relentless hunter. On the 21st of June, 1791, the king was captured while attempting a desperate escape. On September the 21st of the following year, France was proclaimed a republic, effectively abolishing the centuries-old royal authority forever. And finally, on January the 21st, 1793, the heavy blade of the guillotine fell, sealing the king's ultimate fate. The very number he spent a lifetime fleeing from became the precise date of his absolute and total destruction. Fact number 23. The dance of geniuses on the calendar. Stephen Hawking was born on January the 8th, 1942. This was precisely the 300th anniversary of Galileo Galilei's death. The atmosphere is saturated with the chill of cosmic space and the scent of infinity. Hawking dedicated his entire life to deciphering the universe and departed from it on March the 14th, 2018. This day coincided with the birth of Albert Einstein and the official celebration of Pi Day across the globe. To be born on the anniversary of one genius's death and depart on another's birthday resembles a flawless relay of the human mind. It is as if the universe reserved specific temporal slots for its most brilliant minds, meticulously planning every entry and exit, to emphasize that within this perceived chaos there exists a flawless and absolute order beyond our comprehension. Fact number 24. The double murder in Erdington. The year is 1817, Birmingham. Young Mary Ashford is discovered lifeless in Erdington Park. Exactly 157 years later, in 1974, the body of Barbara Forrest is found at the very same location. Both victims were exactly 20 years of age. Both shared the same birthday, and both had attended a party shortly before their tragic demise. Even the primary suspect's name was identical in both cases: Thornton. The air is thick, with the scent of damp grass and a centuries-old dread. Time seemingly created a perfect duplicate of the crime, using the exact same coordinates and names to demonstrate its ease in repeating horrific narratives across the centuries. Fact number 25. The house at the center of the war. The year is 1861, the dawn of the American Civil War. A cannonball tears through the chimney and slams into Wilmer McLean's kitchen. The air is thick with the scent of gunpowder and scorched porridge. The man decides to flee the war, heading far south to protect his family. 4 long years pass. April 1865. General Lee seeks a place for the signing of surrender and halts before a seemingly random house. This was Wilmer McLean's new home. The bloodiest war in the nation's history began in his kitchen and concluded in his parlor. Reality literally pursued this man across the map, ensuring the final period was placed precisely where it had first set an exclamation mark. Fact number 26. The bullet magnet. Robert Todd Lincoln, the son of the great president, was a true magnet for historical tragedies. In the year 1865, he stood at the bedside of his dying father in the tragic aftermath of the fatal shot in the theater. 16 years later, he witnessed the assassination of President Garfield firsthand at a bustling and crowded railroad station. Another 20 years passed. President McKinley extended an invitation to him for a grand and prestigious exposition. No sooner had Robert entered the hall than fatal shots rang out at the leader's head. 3 presidential assassinations, and one man was always at the epicenter. Fact number 27. Reincarnation on the brakes. August the 14th, 1988. In Italy, the legendary creator of crimson supercars, Enzo Ferrari, passes away. The air is heavy, with the scent of burnt rubber and expensive cologne. Exactly 2 months later, on October the 15th of that same year, the footballer Mesut Ozil is born. As the boy grows up, the world freezes in astonishment. Their faces are identical, like 2 identical prints pressed onto the same sheet of aged paper. The eyes, the curve of the nose, even the exact shape of the smile are mirror images across time. The Code of Life simply reused an old model in a new shell, not wasting a single second to create a different design. It appears as though the soul of the great designer decided to trade the high-speed racing circuits for the lush green grass of a football stadium. Fact number 28. An error in the database. The year is 1903, Leavenworth Prison. A new inmate named Will West is brought into the measurement office. The clerk, bewildered, claims he has seen this man before. The air reeked of chlorine and heavy iron. It is discovered that another Will West is already serving his sentence in this very prison. They appear as perfect twins, possessing the same names and identical bodily parameters according to the Bertillon system. Yet these two had never met and shared no common relatives. This was a systematic glitch in the fabric of existence itself, forcing the Matrix to create 2 identical files under the same name in the same place, forever altering the world's criminal identification system. Fact number 29. Death's friendliest foe. Croatian teacher Frane Selak lived a life that no screenwriter could ever have imagined. The air is heavy with the acrid scent of railway smoke and a paralyzing, icy fear. He emerged a survivor when a train plunged into the depths of a frozen river. Exactly 1 year later, he was sucked out of an airplane without a parachute, falling through the heavens only to land safely within a soft haystack. He subsequently escaped a burning bus, survived a car plunge into a deep ravine, and narrowly outran a massive fuel tank explosion at a station. Following 7 fatal encounters, he purchases his very first lottery ticket and wins $1 million, turning a lifetime of trauma into gold. His fate was a chaotic program that first attempted to delete him, then chose to issue a massive compensation for every previous technical server error. Fact number 30. A random frame across the years. The year is 1939. London. A young girl named Doris plays in the park, while a passing cameraman captures her innocence on film for a newsreel archive. The air is fragrant with flowers and the heavy anticipation of a great war. 70 long years pass by into the future. A man named Graham is watching a documentary about Old England. Suddenly, he recognizes his wife, Doris, appearing on screen as she was at just 3 years old. But the true shock was yet to come. In the very next frame, Graham notices a small boy walking right past her. It was himself. It is he himself. They would only meet 30 years after those cameras rolled, completely unaware that reality had already filmed their first date decades before they ever truly met. Fact 31. The Train of 3 Strangers. The year is 1920, a train winding its way through the snow-capped Andes Mountains. Inside the compartment, 3 complete strangers meet, having never crossed paths before in their lives. The air is thick with the scent of damp wool and the robust aroma of strong coffee. The first introduces himself as Mr. Bingham. The second states that his surname is Powell. The third man silently produces a business card that reads Bingham Powell. They were not related and had never heard of one another until this very moment. The mathematical probability of 2 people meeting in a single carriage, whose surnames combine to form the hyphenated name of a third, is 0. It appears to be the lazy work of a random name generator that simply merged 2 previous entries into a single new file. Fact 32. The Ring from the Earth. Sweden, the year 2011. Lena Paulson is busy preparing a traditional Christmas dinner. The air is rich with the festive scent of cinnamon, roasted goose, and the profound warmth of home comfort. She removes her gold wedding band, but in a mere heartbeat, it vanishes without leaving a single trace. Lena searched for it relentlessly for 16 long years, inspecting every narrow crevice and crack within the floorboards. Time flows onward. While working in her garden, she pulls an ordinary carrot from the rich, dark soil. Suddenly she beholds something miraculous. The ring is perfectly encircled around the vegetable, which had grown directly through it deep beneath the earth. The mathematical probability of a root passing precisely through that golden circle in the absolute darkness of the soil is 0. It appears as a humble apology from nature itself, deciding to return what was lost after 16 years with surgical precision. Fact 33. Memory in a stranger's chest. In the year 1995, Sonny Graham receives a new heart from a donor who had taken his own life. The air is saturated with the sterile cleanliness of the hospital and the sharp metallic tang of fear. The surgery is a total success. Sonny meets the widow of his savior, feeling an inexplicable and magnetic attraction to her, and before long, they are wed. 12 years pass by. Sonny's life appeared seemingly perfect, yet suddenly, he begins to act in the exact same manner as his donor once did. He departs from this world under identical circumstances, employing the very same weapon to fulfill his tragic fate. 2 separate lives, 1 single heart, and 1 ultimate finale, replicated down to the very smallest and most tragic detail. This serves as the final, undeniable proof that our world is not a collection of mere accidents, but a complex and rigid program where the script remains impossible to alter, even when a stranger's life beats rhythmically within your own chest.